Welcome back to On the Same Page. We are on Daf Chaf Ches Amud Beis, 28b of Maseches Taanis. We are 3 lines from the bottom of the page. We're going through the various events that occurred on the 17th of Tammuz, and now we come to the 5th and final one that's mentioned in the Mishnah, which was that someone, we'll see it's Menashe, the king of Israel, the evil king, placed a tselem, an idol, in the Heichal, in the Beis HaMikdash. That's what the Mishnah said. So the Gemara, as we've been doing, is going through how we know that it was done on the 17th of Tammuz. So it says, Hamid tselem b'Heichal, he had placed a idol in the temple, Minolan. From where do we know this? The answer is Dichsiv, because the verse says, this is a verse in Daniel. Chapter 12, it says, Eis Husar HaTamid, and from the time that the Tamid, the daily offering, was removed, Velases Shakutz Shomen, and was placed a desolate abomination, referring to an idol. So we see from this pasuk, from this verse, that the same time that the Tamid was stopped, was halted, the bringing of the daily offering, an idol was placed in the temple. And we learned last week that we have a tradition that the Tamid, the daily offering, was halted on the 17th of Tammuz. And so therefore we see it was the same time that from this verse we see that at that same time, on the 17th of Tammuz, the idol was placed in the Heichal. I think last week I wasn't sure which Beis HaMikdash it was referring to, the first or the second, when the Tamid was stopped, and I thought actually it was the second, but we see from here that it's referring to the first. In the first Beis HaMikdash, they stopped bringing the Karban Tamid, the daily offering, on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz, the 17th of Tammuz, and from this verse we see that same day, as we have a tradition, that happened on that day, the same day was the day that Menashe placed an idol in the Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara asks, V'chad hava, was it really only one idol? V'haksiv, but we have another verse in Daniel which says, V'al kanaf shkutzim mishomein, and it uses the plural. It says on the wings, on the corners of these these desolate abominations, and it refers to them in the plural. It refers to the idols in the plural. So it sounds like there was more than one. But the Mishnah says, Hamid tselem b'Heichal. He placed a singular idol in the Heichal. So why? But here we see that it was actually more than one. So what's going on here? So Amar Rava explains Trei Havu, that really there were 2 idols that he placed. V'nafal chad al chavre, but one of them fell on top of the other. V'tavri le'liyade, and he broke its arm. And since one of the idols was now broken, so it didn't consider it, I guess both in the Mishnah and really in the first pasuk that we quoted, in terms of what he placed in the Heichal, it only mentions one idol because one of them got broken when the other one fell on it. And the Gemara recounts V'shtakach, and they found Dehava Ksiv, on that idol it was written, Nat Savisa Lechruve Besa, you wanted to destroy the Beis HaMikdash, Ashlimas le, Yadcha Ashlimas le, your hand was paid to you. Now what does this mean? So there's 2 possibilities that Rashi brings. One possibility is that what it means is that the idol that was intact, I think that's where it was inscribed, these words, the idol that fell on top of the other one, and it was inscribed that you, the other idol, you wanted to destroy the Beis HaMikdash. What does that mean? How did the idol want to destroy the Beis HaMikdash? Meaning the idols, in general, they drew the Jewish people after them and caused them to sin. And in a way, they were bringing about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. And I paid you back. I paid you for what you did by knocking off your hand. That's the first possibility. The other possibility is that what they were expressing, that they both wanted to destroy the Beis HaMikdash together, and Rashi says right? We wanted to destroy the Beis Hamikdash, and you're lending me your hand. That somehow, like by breaking off its hand, the first idol, it's saying we're doing this together. You're lending me your hand to do this, and together they would accomplish the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. So this was apparently inscribed on the idol that these words, you wanted to destroy the Beis Hamikdash or the house, and your hand was either paid to me as a retribution, or your hand is lent to me so that we can do this together. That was expressed on one of the idols. Okay, but that was the last of the 5 things that occurred on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. The 5 things were, just to recall, the luchos. Moshe broke the luchos on Shiva Asar B'Tammuz. What else did we have? We had that they stopped bringing the carbon tamid. The city was breached. Apostumus burned the Torah, and an idol was placed Menashe placed an idol in the Beis Hamikdash, all on the 17th of Tammuz. Now we turn to the 9th of Av, which was the next part of the Mishnah. So it said in the Mishnah that there were also, I think it said five things that happened on Tisha B'Av as well. Chamisha b'Tisha B'Av, 5 things happened on Tisha B'Av. The first was that the Mishnah said, Nigzar l'avosenu shel yikansu la'aretz. It was decreed on our forefathers that they would not enter the land, they would have to wander in the desert for 40 years. So, when did that happen? So the Gemara goes into it. The Gemara says, B'Tisha B'Av, we're on the second line of Chavtes Amar Aleph of 29a, B'Tisha B'Av nigzar l'avosenu shel yikansu la'aretz. On the 9th of Av, it was decreed upon our forefathers that they wouldn't enter the land. Minalan, from where do we know this? D'chsiv, because the verse says, what we're going to do now is we're going to learn a little bit of the chronology of what occurred in the Midbar. So it says, Vayhi b'chodesh harishon b'shana hashenis be'echad l'chodesh hukam hamishkan. So this is talking about when the Mishkan, when the tabernacle was erected in the Midbar, in the desert. It says it was in the first month of the second year on the first of the month. So the first of the first month is the first of Nisan. In the second year, that's when the Mishkan was erected. So again, they left Mitzrayim in Nisan, the 14th of Nisan, or the 15th of Nisan actually, and a year later, approximately, now that the next Nisan starts the second year, so that Nisan, the first of Nisan, is when the Mishkan was erected. The Amar Mar, and the master said, our sages said, Shana Rishona Asa Moshe Es HaMishkan. During the first year, that's when they built the Mishkan. That's when they brought everything together. We're about to celebrate that to some extent on Sukkot, which really marks the beginning of the process of building the Mishkan. Shnia Hekim Moshe Es HaMishkan. In the second year, that's when Moshe actually put up the Mishkan, the very beginning of the second year, the first of the second year, the first of Nisan. V'shalach meraglim, and that's also when he sent the meraglim, he sent the spies. Uksiv, and it says, how are we going to work out exactly when the meraglim went? So as follows, it says, Vayhi b'shana hasheniz b'chodesh hasheni be'esrim b'chodesh. It was in the second year, B'chodesh Hashem, in the second month, so that's Nisan Iyar. Iyar is the second month. Be'esrim b'chodesh, on the 20th of Iyar, Na'ala ha'anam me'al mishkan ha'idus. That's when the cloud went up from the Mishkan, meaning the Jewish people were at Har Sinai until this point, from basically 45 days about. 44 days after they left Mitzrayim, they arrived at Har Sinai, and now, just over a year later, they're ready to depart Har Sinai. And this was the second year, the second month, the 20th of the month. Wait, I said it's a year later, it's actually a little bit less than a year later. A little bit less than a year later. Right, really, they arrived at Har Sinai on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, and now they're departing on they're ready to depart on the 20th of Iyar. So that's about 10 days less than a year. So here they are. It's the second year. It's the second month. It's the 20th of the month. It's the 20th of Iyar. The cloud of God's presence leaves the Mishkan, which means it's time to pack up the Mishkan and travel. So Uksiv, and it says Vayisu mehar Hashem derech shloshes yom. It says they traveled from the mountain of God, from Har Sinai, for 3 days. Amar Rabbi Chama bar Chanina. Rabbi Chama bar Chanina says, Oso hayom saru me'acharei Hashem. That day they strayed from going after Hashem. And on that third day, after they had left the Mishkan, Uksiv, and it says what happened on that day. V'hasafsuf asher b'kirbo hisavu tava. The mixed masses, the rabble that was among the Jewish people, they desired, and they demanded meat. Vayoshuvu vayivku gam b'nei Yisrael, and the Jewish people themselves, the rest of the Jewish people also cried. They cried for meat. So Hashem gave them meat. And the pasuk says that Uksiv ad chodesh yamim v'gomer. It says that you'll eat meat for up to 30 days and you'll suffer from it, basically. But the point is that this meat would be provided to them for 30 days. So doing a little bit of math, we know they left Har Sinai on the 20th of Iyar. 3 days later they complained, so that would be the 23rd of Iyar. The 23rd of Iyar, or maybe perhaps the 22nd, because if you count the 20th, so the 20th, the 21st, and the 22nd, so the third day was the 22nd of Iyar. And then for 30 days, for a month's time, they had this meat. I think it was the slav. They had this meat, and that was for 30 days. So 30 days later is a month later. It's now the 22nd of Sivan, right? So from the 22nd of Iyar to the 22nd of Sivan, they are consuming this meat, and now it's the 22nd of Sivan. So, and that's what it says, Dahavuhu Esrim V'Tartin V'Sivan. That makes the 22nd of Sivan. Uksiv, and then it says, Vatisager Miriam Shivas Yamin. Now after that is when Miriam spoke Lashon Hara about Moshe Rabbeinu, and she got saras, and they had to wait for her for 7 days. She had to be in quarantine for 7 days. So add another 7 days, Dahavuhu Esrin V'Tisha V'Sivan. So from the 22nd of Sivan till another 7 days is now the 29th of Sivan. Uksiv, and it says, Shalach lecha anashim. And then after that, that's when they sent out the spies. Hashem says to Moshe, send forth the spies as they have requested. Hashem gives his permission. V'tanya, we have a brisa. Be'esrim v'tisha b'Sivan shalach Moshe meraglim. Right? Like we're saying, it was the 29th of Sivan. That's when they sent forth the meraglim. Uksiv, and it says, Vayashuvu mitora aretz miketz arba'im yom. They returned from touring the land after 40 days. So now we could do a little math. It's the 29th of Sivan, and they're going to be gone for 40 days. So if you add it up, so what do we have? We have, I think, one more day of Sivan. So that's 1 day of Sivan. And then we're going to have 29 days of Tammuz. So that's 30 altogether. And let me just see how we get to this. Just do this math right. Sivan is 30 days. So you have the 29th, we're going to count the 29th of Sivan. We'll count the 30th of Sivan. so that's 2. 30 days of Tammuz makes 32. And 8 days of Av makes 40. Now the Gemara at this point though is going to assume that Tammuz was actually 29 days because that's how long it normally is. So let's do this again. So we have the last 2 days of Sivan. We have Tammuz, which is 29 days, so that's 31. And then we have the 8 days of Av leading up to the 9th of Av. So that makes 39. But we are supposed to have 40 days. So the Gemara asks, there's a problem here, right? Because they're going to cry on the eve of the 9th. So we really have to just get to the end of the 8th day of Av. We don't want to get actually to the 9th day. So, right, and then they return on the end of the 8th. So to do the math again, so we have the 2 days at the end of Sivan. We have 29 days of Tammuz, that's 31. And then we have 8 days of Av to get to the end of the 8th, when the Meraglim, the spies are now back, and then they're going to cry that night. But the problem is that's only 39 days. So that's what the Gemara says, we need 40 days. So it says, Hani Arba'im Yom Nechi Chad Hafu. That's 40 days minus 1, that's only 39 days. We're short a day here. So Amar Abaye says, Tammuz da'yishasa miluyim el yua. No, Tammuz of that year was full. Even though Tammuz is normally short, 29 days, that year it was 30 days. So then you get 40, because you have the 2 days of Sivan, you have 30 days of Tammuz, which makes 32, and then you have 8 days of Av, so that makes 40. So on the 40th day was the 8th of Av, and then that night is when they'll cry, when it's Tisha B'Av. And he says a pasuk tichsev. He quotes a pasuk from Eicha. It says, "Kara alai moed lishbor bachura." You declared upon me a moed, a holiday, to destroy my young ones. And he seems to be saying, reading this pasuk in Eicha, as the idea that you called a moed and you gave an extra day of the month, you declared Rosh Chodesh a day later to destroy my young ones specifically on Tisha B'Av, by delaying 1 day, so the day of destruction ends up being the 9th of Av. Uksiv, and what happened when the spies came back? It says, Vatisa kol ha'eda, and all the congregation raised up, Vayitnu es kolam, and they gave forth their voices, Vayivku ha'am balayla hahu, and the nation cried on that night. So after they came back on the 8th, so that night, which is now the 9th of Av, that's when the nation cried, and they said, we'd rather go back, you're taking us to a terrible place, Eretz Yisrael, we'd rather go back to Mitzrayim, to Egypt. And they cried that night. Amar Rabba, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabba said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Oso Hayom, Tisha B'Av Haya. That day, that night was Tisha B'Av, was the 9th of Av. Amar Lahem HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Hashem said to the Jewish people, a famous line, Atem bechisen bechia shel chinam. You cried a pointless cry. Vani kovei lachem bechia ledoros. I will establish for you crying for generations. I will make this day a day where there's something to actually cry about, and that's the beginning of the Tisha B'Av story, really. Is when the Meraglim come, and they give a bad report about Eretz Yisrael, and the Jewish people cry on Tisha B'Av, so Hashem says, you cried for nothing, this will be a day of crying. So that's the first thing. It's the day, and not only that, but it's the day that Hashem said, that's it, you're going to wander in the desert for 40 years until all the adults, all those between 20 and 60, die out, or all those over 20, really. So that's the first thing. Charav habayis barishona. The first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed on Tisha B'Av. How do we know? Minalam, the Bach adds in. Dichsiv, where do we know this from? Because the pasuk says, this is a pasuk in Melachim Beis. The pasuk says, Uvachodesh hachamishi b'shiva lachodesh, in the 5th month, which is Av, on the 7th of the month, so on the 7th of Av, Hishnas Chayesrei Shana Melech Nebuchadnezzar Melech Babel, which is the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia's reign. Ba Nebuzradan, Rav Tabachim Nebuzradan, the chief butcher, came. Evan Melech Babel, the servant of Babel, he came to Yerushalayim, Vayisrav as Beis Hashem, and he burnt the house of God. So this verse seems to indicate that he came on the 7th of Av. That's the pasuk in Melachim, in Kings. Uksiv, and it says elsewhere, I think in Yirmiyah, it says in Yirmiyah, Ubachodesh HaChamishi, Be'asar Lachodesh. It recounts the same event, and instead it says that it happened on the 10th of Av, on the 5th, in the 5th month, on the 10th of Av, Yishnas Chasrei Shnon Melech Nebuchadnezzar, the 19th year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Melech Bavel, the king of Bavel, Ba Nebuzradan Rav Tabachim, Nebuzradan, the head of the butchers, came, Amad Lifnei Melech Bavel B'Yerushalayim, and he stood before the king of Bavel in Yerushalayim, and then the next pasuk says that he burned the house of Hashem, he burned the Beis HaMikdash down. So we have in Melachim, it says it happened on the 7th of Av. We have in Yirmiyah, it happened on the 10th of Av. Says the Gemara Tanya, we have a brisa. Efshar lomar b'shiva. You can't say it happened on the 7th. Shari kvar ne'amar b'asar, because it says it happened on the 10th. V'efshar lomar b'asar, and you can't say it happened on the 10th. Shari kvar ne'amar b'shiva, because it says it happened on the 7th. So ha ketzad. So how is it possible? Which one was it? So the brisa says this is what happened. B'shiva nichnesu nachrim laheichal. On the 7th of Av, the Gentiles, the Babylonians, entered the Beis HaMikdash. The achlu, and they ate. The kilkuluba, and they destroyed, they acted destructively. Shvi'i Shmini. On the 7th and the 8th of Av. They ransacked the place first. Utishi samuch chashecha. And on the 9th of Av, as it was already almost later in the day, on the 9th of Av, that's when they lit it on fire, and it continued to burn the whole day, the whole 10th of Av. Shenemar, as the verse says, Oy lanu, woe to us, kifana hayom, because the day has turned, ki natut slali erev, the shadows have stretched out, it's late in the day, and we're saying woe. So this pasuk, which is a pasuk in Yirmiyah, it talks about that they waged war against the Beis HaMikdash, and the implication, it talks about woe, later in the day. I guess this is either a reference to when they set fire to the Beis HaMikdash on the 9th of Av, or that it seems from the context of the Gemara, it's understanding that it continued to burn throughout the day on the 10th of Av. Woe to us, it's still burning throughout the day. The Hainu Da'am Rabbi Yochanan. And with this we understand the statement of Rabbi Yochanan, who said, Ilmali ha'yisi ba'oso adar, had I lived in that generation of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, lo kavativ ela ba'asiri, I would have made the fast of Tisha B'Av, not on Tisha B'Av, not on the 9th of Av, but on the 10th of Av, because that's when most of the Heichal, most of the Beis HaMikdash actually burned down on the 10th, because they only lit it on fire late in the day of the 9th. So Rabbi Yochanan says, had I been there, I would have made the fast day on the 10th. The Rabbanan and the rabbis of that time, who made it, the sages of that time, the Nevi'im of that time, who made it on the 9th of Av, why did they do that? Because Eschalta de Puranusa Adifa. The beginning of the tragedy is primary, is more important. So since the beginning of the tragedy was on the 9th of Av, so that's really what, where it started. Once it started, it was just going. So, but the main thing they said is the beginning of the tragedy. So therefore, since it started burning on the 9th of Av, they made that the fast day. How do we know that the second Beis HaMikdash was burned down on the 9th of Av? Titania, because we have a brisa, it says, Megalgalin zechus liyom zakai. We sort of roll over, we repeat merits for days that are meritorious. V'chova liyom chayav, and obligations and guiltiness for days that are chayav, that are guilty. So Amru, so they said, Kishachara Beis HaMikdash, Barishona, the day that the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Oso Hayom Erev Tisha B'Av Haya. That day was the evening of Tisha B'Av. It was destroyed on the eve of the 9th of Av, later in the day. Umatzei Shabbos Haya, it says it was a Matzei Shabbos, it was the after Shabbos. Umatzei Shvis, it was the end of a Shemitah year. Mishmarta shel Yehoyariv haisa, and it was the mishmar, it was the turn of the family of Kohanim of Yehoyariv. V'alaviyim hayu omrim shira, and the Leviim were singing their shira in the Beis Hamikdash. Ve'omding al duchanim, and standing on their platform. Uma shira hayu omrim, what shira were they singing? So actually they weren't singing the shira of that day, they were singing the shira of a different day. They were singing Vayashav Aleim Es Onam Uvirasam Yatzmisim, meaning even though it was now Sunday, but they were singing the shira of Wednesday, of Kel Nikamos Hashem. God is a God of avengement, of vengeance, and it says there Vayashav Aleim Es Onam, he returned upon them their iniquity, he punishes for his sins. Uvirasam Yatzmisim, and in their evil he cuts them off. That's what it says in this chapter of Tehillim, that they were saying, though hispiku lomar Yatzmisim Hashem Elokeinu, they didn't have a chance to even finish the shira, they didn't have a chance to say that in their evil Hashem cuts them off. At shebo nachrim v'kavshim, until the Gentiles came and conquered them, and that was the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. And says the Brisa, v'chein b'shniya, and the same was true for the second Beis Hamikdash, that it also was destroyed on that same day, because we are megalgalin chova, we roll over, God brings about retribution and punishment on a day that is auspicious, or inauspicious maybe, for that. Okay. Then we said another thing that happened on Tisha B'Av was Nilkada Beitar. The city of Beitar was conquered. How do we know that happened on, this was I think during the rebellion of Bar Kokhba, it was a time of great hope, and no, it was quashed on Tisha B'Av. How do we know it happened on Tisha B'Av? Gemara, also that's just a tradition. Nefresha Ha'ir, the city was plowed over. This is prophesied in the Navi, as I think we're going to quote. Tanya, we have a brisa. Kishacharav Turnus Rufus Harasha Sahechal. When Turnus Rufus, the Roman general, destroyed the Beis Hamikdash, Nigzera Gezera Rabban Gamliel Lahariga. He decreed that Rabban Gamliel would be killed. So, Ba'adam Echad, Ve'amad Beis HaMedrash, a certain Roman master, a Roman elite, who knew about this plot to kill Rabban Gamliel, he came to the Beis HaMedrash, and he said, Ve'amar, Ba'alachotem Isbakesh, Ba'alachotem Isbakesh. The master of the nose is Sat, the master of the nose is Sat. This was code word for the tall and pronounced one, the great one is sought by the Romans, and he was hinting to them that Rabban Gamliel is going to be killed. So Shamar Rabban Gamliel heard Azal Tasha Minayu. So he went and he hid from the Romans, and this person who warned him, this Roman officer, knew or heard about where Rabban Gamliel was hiding. So Azal Legabe Betzina, so he went to him in secret. And Amar Leim, he said to Rabban Gamliel, Imatzilna lach, Maisis li la'amadasi. He asked him, Maisis li la'amadasi, if I save you, will you bring me to the world to come? Amar Leim, hey. Rabban Gamliel said yes. Amar Leim, Eshtavali. So the Roman officer said, swear to me. Eshtavali, he swore, he promised. Rabban Gamliel promised him. So what happened? How did he save him? Salik le'igra, so this Roman went up to the roof. Nafil missed, and he fell, he jumped, and he killed himself. And that somehow saved Rabban Gamliel's life. How did it save him? Because, Ugamiri, it was known, Diki Gazri Gezirta, if there's a decree made, Mischad Minayu, and one of the people involved in that decree dies, Mivatli Legazartayu. So they nullify that decree, because they see it's an omen that it was a bad decree. So here he had been present at where the Romans decided that they would take Rabban Gamliel's life, and he wanted to save Rabbi Gamliel. So it could be that he changed his mind. It could be he was originally, he did want to kill him, then he changed his mind, or maybe he abstained, but in any event, he was considered part of the decree, and as long as there's someone who made the decree died, so they saw that as an omen that it was a bad decree. So by jumping off the roof and killing himself, he saved Rabbi Gamliel because they canceled their decree. Yatzta Baskel, a heavenly voice came out, Va'amar, and it said, Adon zeh mezuman l'chayil naba. This master is designated to go to the world to come. So indeed, he earned himself a portion of the world to come as a result of that action. Now, the Gemara didn't, in our version, didn't tell us when. This actually has nothing to do with the plowing over of the sigi. It just, earlier we said Nefer Sha'ir, the sigi was plowed, and then so some versions add in the word Gemara. Again, that's a tradition that's when the Beis HaMikdash, the Makom HaMikdash, the place of the Mikdash was plowed over, just destroying anything that was left there. And then it brings this story, which is a side story about Rabbi Gamliel. Now, along these lines, more stories about this. So the Gemara says, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught them, Mishacharav Habayis Barishona, when the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, Niskabzu Kitos Shel Pirchei Kahuna. These groups of the young Kohanim, they gathered together, and they were holding the keys to the Beis HaMikdash, and they went up to the roof of the Beis HaMikdash, and they said before Hashem, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the world, since we didn't merit to be trustworthy gabayim, caretakers of the Beis HaMikdash, we've sinned, we lost our chance to care for the Beis HaMikdash. Yiyu maftechos mesuros lach. You should have the keys back. Vizdarkum kapimala, and they were standing on the roof. They tossed the keys up. Biyatzta came pisas yad v'kibalta, and some kind of heavenly hand came and swooped up those keys. Vehem kafzu v'naflu l'tol cha'or, and they jumped into the burning embers, the burning fires of the Beis HaMikdash, and took their own lives. Ve'alei and konen Yeshayahu, and about them Yeshayahu prophesied a kina, a dirge, a lamentation. He lamented them. Yeshayahu Hanavi, when he said in Sefer Yeshayahu, it says, Masa Gei Chizayon, the burden of this image, this vision of the valley, referring to Yerushalayim as a valley, even though Yerushalayim is a mountain, I guess either because it has valleys as well, or I think I saw that it's because it was, it had descended so low, it was calling it a valley. He said, Malach Eifo, what's going on with you? Ki alisa kulcha legagos, that you all have gone up to the roofs. Tshuos Meleya, a place that used to be full of uproar. Ir Homia, a city that was tumultuous. Kirya Aliza, a joyous city. And what's happened to you, Yerushalayim? Chalalecha lo chalalei charev. Your corpses are not the corpses of the sword, v'lo mesi milchama, and they're not the dead of war. Rather, he was prophesizing to this event of those who died by suicide, I guess, and he was lamenting these terrible events. And Af Kadosh Baruch Hu Nemar, even about Kadosh Baruch Hu, it says also in Yeshayahu, Mekarkar Kir Bishoa Elahar, he cries out over the wall and he laments over the mountain, the city of Yerushalayim, like Hashem also cried out and lamented over Yerushalayim. Okay, next week we'll learn some of the practical parts of the beginning of the month of Av, where we are mimayit b'simcha, where we lessen our joy in the month of Av because of the destruction of the two Batei Mikdash.